We love opportunities to bring those of us with like minds together from around the state to get some thinking where we can share and learn and grow our work around environmental literacy together. And we'll see if this works because now it seems like I don't have permission to play the things. Okay, here we go. Um, so today we are going to be focusing on expanded learning. So after we do our welcome, we'll be talking about expanded learning. We'll have a couple different rounds of breakout rooms for you to get a chance to ask deeper questions, to get to know one another, to think deeply together. And we will have a little closing here at the end. So to get started, I don't know if any of you have seen this. I am a huge fan of picture books for kids. And actually, I taught high school and I used picture books in high school all the time because kids really enjoyed them and it made them feel loved and happy and back to their childhood roots. So this is a picture book that was shared recently um, with me from our department at the San Diego County office that is focused on California Indian education, our Native Ways of Knowing group. And I just wanted to watch a couple minutes of this with you, and then we'll use it to launch a quick chat.
Fry Bread, a Native American family story. Written by Kevin Noble Maylard, illustrated by Juana Martinez Neal. Fry bread is food. Flour, salt, water, cornmeal, baking powder, perhaps milk, maybe sugar. All mixed together in a big bowl. Fry bread is shape. Hands mold the dough, flat like a pancake, round like a ball, or puffy like Nana's softest pillow. Fry bread is sound. The skillet clangs on the stove. The fire blazes from below. Drop the dough in the skillet. The bubbles sizzle and pop. Fry bread is color. Golden brown, tan, or yellow. Deep like coffee, sienna, or earth. Light like snow and cream. Warm like rays of sun.
All right, so just a little taste of that for you. And really a space to be thinking about the idea that part of our connection to the indigenous lands around us is thinking about traditional foods and thinking about what grows here and how that's used for people to sustain themselves and keep themselves healthy and moving. And I know one of the things I like to see here in San Diego is how many of the stones along a lot of our hiking trails have clear grinding spots and were used locally by our kumeyaay in the past and even currently when we do activities around here. So giving you a chance to think about what are some favorite foods that are maybe in your family, maybe in your town, and how are those tied to the land? How do you think about the foods that you eat and their connection to the land? And we would love to have you take a moment to think about that and then drop your ideas in the chat. Thanks, Letty. Ooh, Monica. I feel like I need to ask how many people are green Pasole people versus red Pasole people.
The answer is both.
Oh, nice, Jeff. So thank you for sharing and for thinking about that and considering again how we connect to the land. I love this idea, this growing all the way to the table that is being shared in the chat. And so our reminder that we are part of the California Environmental Literacy Initiative, work led by 10 Strands, really statewide, hoping to bring this environmental literacy focus to all of our county offices, all of our districts across the state. And we've really been making progress over that in the last few years. And so this is our current map of county offices that are involved, either through coming to community of practice meetings like this one, or as the darker orange shows, through being part of the Innovation Hub. And we love having you all here to join and the people that you work with at your county offices. A reminder of our objectives, really thinking about how do we help serve as the backbone support to bring this work forward and keep growing it across the state. And I'm going to turn it over to Amity to intro what we're going to be doing today.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Amity Sandage from Santa Cruz County Office of Education, the Environmental Literacy Coordinator here, and it is my pleasure and honor to introduce some of our colleagues from the expanded learning world and beyond as well. For them to share how they're connecting environmental literacy into the work of expanded learning. So we're going to have three separate sections here. First, from Butte County Office of Education, the Region 2 Expanded Learning Services is represented by Gloria Halley and Jeff Salberg. And Gloria, I just realized I'm not even sure if I'm saying your last name correctly. Is it Haley or Hallie?
It's Hallie.
Hallie, okay.
Like Hallie, like Valley.
That's right. I knew that. And I was like, oh, have to check. So Gloria is the regional director there, and Jeff is coordinator and STEAM lead. And then from Alameda County Office of Education, Monica Dennis is the program director for STEAM and expanded learning programs and Region 4 Expanded Learning for All. And at Stanislaus County Office of Education, Jose Marquez is the STEM coordinator and so much more. Jose, I think you handle history, social science too, and things. So not specifically like expanded learning, but it falls under his umbrella. And these folks were all a part of the Cali County Office of Education Environmental Literacy Fellowship Program. That program is a 9-month fellowship that supports County Office of Education staff to launch or grow an environmental literacy and sustainability initiative at their County Office of Education to drive change across the campuses, the curriculum, and the community and culture in the schools that they serve and the districts they serve. And so, yeah, I've had the pleasure of working with them in the fellowship, and can't wait for you to hear just a taste of their work. They're going to do a quick overview, because right after that, we'll have breakouts where you can decide where you want to go to ask more questions directly and have more in-depth conversation with them. So with that, I'll turn it over to them. We'll start with Region 2 and Gloria and Jeff.
Thank you so much. Again, it's so nice to see so many colleagues from around the state. and we appreciate you being here today. Much has been said about the region too. We support 9 counties, Butte, Glenn, Tehama, Shasta, Trinity, Siskiyou, Modoc, Lassen, and Plumas. And so it's an area that is beautiful, but also very subject to fires. Um, but we have had great working partnerships across our region, and we're excited to share those with you. So I'm going to turn it over to Jeff to introduce himself now.
Good morning, everyone. Jeff Stolberg. As Amity and Gloria alluded to, I am the coordinator for Region 2 Expanded Learning Services, and part of that role as I serve as the STEAM lead for the region. And I think we can go ahead and go to the next slide, and we'll get into it. So, as Gloria mentioned, we serve a 9-county region, but we are based out of Butte County. And in Butte County, environmental literacy is not something that's new to us. But I wanted to give you just a little bit of context of kind of where we've been. So, a 2014 report from the Center for Youth Wellness revealed that 76.5% of Butte County residents experienced one or more adverse childhood experiences, ACEs. I'm sure you're all familiar with that. At the time, that was the highest rate in California and significantly above the state average of 61.7%. Since then, I believe Butte County is now down to number 7, but 2 or 3 of our counties are well represented in the top 10. So for Butte County, though, this was before the 2018 Camp Fire. This was before the 2023 Park Fire, and as well as a slew of other environmental and natural disasters that intensified the already existing trauma. And so as a response to this, and it was timely, our involvement with the Cali COE Fellowship Program that Amity alluded to earlier really helped solidify our approach within the region, as well as give us access to just a plethora of resources to distribute within the region. So we really recognize that environmental literacy has to go beyond just the principles and knowledge, but has to also include the healing from environmental trauma, especially for the folks in our region, in our area. And we recognize the value, and we encourage the land acknowledgements that honor the indigenous connections to the land. We embed trauma-informed practices with environmental education. We try and create safe spaces for processing that environmental trauma and grief, as well as developing tools that connect personal healing with environmental stewardship. This approach has really led us to engage in several different initiatives, not only in Butte County, but throughout the region as well. And I'll pass over to Gloria to kind of touch on more of those initiatives.
Okay, so next slide. So we've been very fortunate to have a strong working relationship with Shasta County Office of Ed, and I know that Nate Fairchild has participated on these calls in the past, but he approached us about an environmental literacy synthesis grant to include not only formal educators, teachers, but also informal educators, our expanded learning staff. And so we were in complete agreement with him to pursue the grant from CREEC. And those of you who are not familiar with CREEC, it's the California Regional Environmental Education Community. And it was a 3-year initiative, but it was inclusive of not just Region 2, but also Region 1, 3, and 4. And it was a wonderful partnership because it focused on the whole child. And those of us in expanded learning understand that that's where we should be concentrating our efforts, is the whole child. And so it was about science integration with nature and also social emotional learning. And that's where I became really adamant that we needed to be a part of this effort. And so we did increase our own capacities on environmental literacy, but that of the expanded learning staff as well. At about the same time, after we went through the first 3 years with the CREEC grant, we were approached by the Paradise Park and Recreation Department to participate on another grant. And this was brought about by Prop 64, and it was to be funded by the California Natural Resource Agency. And it was a focus on youth voice and leadership. We called it the Elements Grant, but it was to get our youth who come from impoverished backgrounds. And it was a partnership between Butte and Glenn County youth to really develop their capacities about what is environmental literacy, what is it that we can do more of in which the students can participate and have a voice. And also it was a preventative measure so they wouldn't get involved with the alcohol and drug abuse. And like Jeff mentioned before, and Amity mentioned, we became aware of the Cali County Office of Ed Fellowship. We both participated, and it was very exciting. And what we'd like to culminate our next presentation video is showing how one of our strong surf programs in Tehama County has really just made this well-designed in terms of showing what the youth can do once they're empowered with the information. So we'll go ahead and look at that video.
And if you or Jeff can give me access real quick, then we'll open it up.
That would be a Jeff techie thing.
Yeah, Jeff should have an email that, because Crystal just requested access.
I'm going to get there right now. Bear with me, folks.
And I wonder if you'll have to stop share and reshare. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see here. It's all good.
All right, go ahead and try now. I apologize about that.
Okay, all good. I think it's working. Oh.
Recently, our SURF Expanded Learning students completed a series of lessons focused on fire science. These lessons explored all types of fire-related topics, including fire prevention, careers in fire, and emergency management. In addition, students were challenged to establish a community service project that educates or helps the public. Their studies culminated in a field trip to Billy Park in Paradise. Find out more in this Future in Focus.
Fire season upon us and many of our local communities affected by wildfire, the SURF program conducted 16 lessons over an 8-week period designed to introduce students to several aspects of wildfire and wildfire prevention. These lessons included the fire triangle, fire behavior, and wildfire's impact on the environment.
Kids studied fire science. They learned about fire careers. They learned about the 3 components of a fire. They learned about the structure of wildfires, how wildfires happen, how they spread, and then how to prevent wildfires. And they learned about different careers that had to do with forestry, biology, fire careers.
Another goal of these lessons was to empower students to take an active role in community service projects that helps resolve an issue within their local community.
Their community has been touched by fire, so we challenged them to create a community service project where they either educated the public or helped the public regarding a wildfire, because we are a wildfire prone area. Some of them were doing community service projects where they wanted to help the community learn about combustible energy that can be around homes. They also did community service projects where they wanted to thank first responders. They were worried about older people and people with small children. So they did projects that would help create evacuation plans and to-go kits. They did a lot of research on that. They remembered and they learned about animals that possibly died or were injured, or the stress that their owners went under because of the fire, and trying to house the animals during the fire and trying to support the basic needs of the animals.
My community service project was about fire science, and we created an informational pamphlet. We gave pamphlets to all the kids that were presented to, and we hope that they will give it to their parents, and their parents will be soon be educated to fight against wildfires. My community service is donating stuff for the people that need it, and donating canned food, water, school supplies.
We're collecting supplies to donate to the animal shelter because we're helping them in the time of need in the upcoming fire season, because they are overstocked and full of animals.
Our community service project is like to donate food, canned foods, vegetables, school supplies.
My community service project was on fire science, to learn about how to keep fires away since the Paradise Fire,
To solidify these lessons, students visited Billy Park in Paradise, where they experienced firsthand the rebirth of the area while rotating through educational stations led by partnering agencies.
So it's very instrumental on connecting with partners within our community to support our community. And so we wanted to bring them up here so that they could celebrate that. We also partnered with the Butte County Fire Safe Council. They lived through the fires here and they've been part of the regeneration and the joy. So they brought their different aspects of it so kids can learn more about that and participate in it. And just to galvanize everything that the children learned. But we have a whole variety of educational activities set up and a station rotation that talks a lot about how to live more safely with wildfire and how we as people are living in areas that are more prone to wildfire and just things that you need to know if you're living in the foothills or the mountains.
We are talking about how this is a fire adapted landscape and looking at the recovery from the Camp Fire over the past 4 years. Of these fire adapted plants here.
Looking at Ready's Fire Safe Remodel, which is a model that shows home hardening and defensible space.
And we go over things that students in particular can help their families with and changes that you can make to a structure or the property around a structure to make it more likely to withstand a fire.
So we're here today to talk to some of the school kids about careers in the fire service, defensible space, and show them some of the tools that we use to keep the public safe.
We're helping kids experience some mindfulness out in nature. We're helping folks kind of use their breath to slow down and awaken all of their senses. So have the goats out from Paradise Scapegoats. And we are going to talk about how we use those goats to reduce fuels and make areas but especially around communities and canyons and areas that are harder to get more fire safe.
Anywhere that there's people interfacing with wild lands, there's a tremendous wildfire potential. And there are a variety of different ways of trying to manage it, but goats are age-old and time-tested way of managing land, and they do a terrific job of.
And then we have another member of our team leading a nature journaling activity where students will get to use their observational skills. We're right here, it's a hot day, it's about 80 degrees, but we're still in spring. So just taking note of the environment and how fire might be an influence on our environment, taking a look at some of those seasonal changes.
Well, obviously we want to prepare for the future generations and have some folks to replace us when we leave. But more importantly, having them have an understanding of what we're looking for when we show up to an emergency to assist us and get to the right location in a timely manner.
Through these projects, students were able to make a positive impact in their community while also applying the knowledge and skills they learned in the program. All of this while having a great time.
Hope you all enjoyed that. Jeff, it will now.
Yeah, so a couple quick things. There's a lot to unpack within that video, but I know we're tight on time. But as we were kind of saw Crystal in the chat, there's so many community partners in there. You saw John All, who's the ecological director for the Big Chico Creek Ecological Reserves. He's part of our Outdoor Education for All and that Youth Community Access Project. Blake Ellis, who was this ecotherapy program manager at Chico State. That was an outcome of a Healing Trauma Through Nature grant that was also born out of the Outdoor Education for All grant. The other thing to highlight too is, you heard Rick Manson, the battalion chief for CAL FIRE, talk about, we want to leave this, we know that we are leaving this land for those beyond us. And that really, that indigenous notion of, we want to think to, I think, the seventh generation, right? Am I right? The seventh generation, that we want to have a mindset that what we do now really is impacting the seventh generation and to be mindful of how it will impact the seventh generation. So we are, as this slide shows, we are fortunate in our region that we have a plethora of partners to work with. We've got Turtle Bay Exploration Park in Redding, the Thermalito Forebay Aquatic Center in Oroville, the Honeybee Discovery Center in Orland, and CSU Chico have been phenomenal partners that help host our conference. The Gateway Science Museum has been a partner in the past. We've worked closely with Brian Brown and California Water Foundation to facilitate a few Project Wet trainings. Some of the hands-on labs that we do as part of our STEAM hub focus on Project Wet activities. And we will, as the flyer shows, we'll be hosting one here in April where up to 20 to 25 expanded learning staff within the region will go through this training and will walk away Project WET certified. So we are thankful for the partners and the opportunities that we have within the region, and we look forward to kind of continuing moving them forward.
And I think that brings it to Region 4. Wasn't that great just to see the kids in the video and how excited they were to share their fire science projects? Thank you for sharing that, Gloria and Jeff. Region 4 is an expanded learning region that serves 7 counties. So we span all the way up to Napa, east as much as Contra Costa County, and then towards the Water San Mateo and San Francisco County. So you can really understand the diversity, not only in our student population, but in our ecosystem and how they all feed in together. I was part of the fellowship program for County Offices of Education last year, and it was such a, thread in my tapestry all last year, and I really enjoyed it. So if you haven't become part of it, I really extend the invitation to you to really work towards integrating environmental literacy. I came to the county office from my middle school science teaching, so I had been in the classroom. I wasn't part of the after school crowd, but I'm so happy that they've let me into their family and now connecting those. So when I was part of the fellowship, I took a journey with the fellowship to visit all the green schools in our 7 county region. And one of the things that I was starting to make connections was, where is our expanded learning partnership happening? We do create a 9-hour school day for children who need care before school, after school, and it's not just babysitting. We need to have some weight to what we're doing. And so on my visits, I wasn't finding those answers about where were we. We were just a portable in the back. And so thinking about being more than just a portable on the back lawn, and I drive around every day when I come, to work, and I look at one of the community fences and it says they tried to bury us, but they didn't know we were seeds. And so I take that saying and bring it forward to everybody and thinking about expanded learning. Do not bury us in the back of the field. Bring us to the forefront. Bring us to the table, and we are going to enrich your program tenfold. And the reason why we need to increase our presence is because when we make those connections, we acknowledge that children learn a lot after school. And if you're looking at what children are telling us about their knowledge in science, only 1/3 of our students in California are meeting or exceeding those goals. And if you're not familiar with School Day, there is the California dashboard that tells us about the health of our academics in California. And so science is one of those that is now taking its place on the dashboard. It used to be math and English language arts, but now science is taking part of it. And I believe LEA should be writing about it in their LCAPs as early as 26, 27. So as we, as advocates for environmental learning as well as expanded learning, let's try to promote that this is one way to connect our most vulnerable students to their environment. Next slide, please. So that was my, why am I doing this? What's going on in the environment? So I said, so what am I going to do about it? I'm in a position of influence across 7 counties. So what I thought was, well, we need to create our own award. If we don't start speaking up for ourselves, no one's going to reach out and give us that seat at the table. And so in our region, there is an Expanded Learning Green Site Award. So we don't have to wait to get to that seat at the table. We already have something that we can show our school day partners that we are doing great work. And I already knew they were doing great work because I look at those outdoor gardens. I was just at a site visit recently, and there was a lovely after school employee, and he was trying to start his garden. And I said, that's wonderful. And I was so fortunate to be on the site visit. And I said, you know what we do? We actually give you an award for not only growing your garden, but getting kids outside, like we saw Jeff and Gloria doing, getting the kids outside, starting to have them appreciate the outdoors, because we know that, these babies that are in elementary right now were babies at home during the pandemic. And it's time to get them outside. That prior generations had enjoyed so much. And so we have 6 categories. They have to do 5 activities. Maybe it's, visiting a local green building, right? All of our California legislations like green building, green building. But we can't talk about green building with our children unless they know what it looks like. What does it feel like? I like them to feel it in their heart, because one of the things that we find works best for our students in expanded learning is really connecting to their emotions, right? Many of our students who happen to come from BIPOC populations have a rich ancestry of oral history. And just like we began our conversation here today with the book about fried bread, that's exactly what we need to do for our youngest ones in order to carry, right? Because you're thinking about a story that your grandma told you or your grandfather told you, and that has now carried on to 1 or 2 generations, and you're passing that on as well. I think I put in the chat at the beginning of this conversation, they said, how do you connect to the earth? I come from an undocumented, illiterate farmer who, grew his family. And so one of those things that he had taught us when we were growing up was like how to plant things. And so when I take herbs and I put them in the garden, I always remember this is connected to the history. History is about food, it's about culture. And so I keep that tradition going to my children, and they're going to remember that. So that is something that we're hoping our award connects to the community, not only having the children doing it, but having after school, after family programs, maybe a science night, math night, but really looking at the asset-based approach to what's going on in our communities. That's awesome, because there's so many wonderful resources that they don't realize, and we just have to walk around the block and their eyes are going to open up. And so that is our program that we're doing right now. It's in its inaugural year, and let me show you a couple of pictures about what we're doing on the next slide. I get to partner up with my colleague who runs the site coordinator program. And so what we're doing is not only helping them build their leadership as site coordinators, because she says they're like mini principals, the after school principal. And so, they're building their leadership skills, but we're showing them how to also connect these important programs such as environmental literacy to their after school. And so we've been doing not only leadership training, but we've been doing environmental literacy training. And we were just in San Mateo County, which is connected to the coastline, but it also has a city component. And so there is a rich Latino culture there. And so we brought in our oral history of the oxalotl. Everybody loves an oxalotl, right? There's all kinds of memes all over the place. So let's talk about it. How did it connect to us as Latinos? And talk about it, and so that our students could feel that connection, that representation, as well as that resistance. Because as I started out, I said they tried to bury us, but they didn't know we were seeds. And so building that continued resistance to the lowered expectation for some of our students that are in after school programs starts with those oral history, those stories, and helping them build. And I know some of my expanded learning colleagues, when we were last in Sacramento last spring, I had everybody talk about data science. And if I just said, hey kids, we're going to do data science, let's make a graph, they're like, wah, wah, I don't want to do that. So what if I did it into an art project? Tapestry, right? We talked about native traditions with the fried bread. Well, we have ancestral history that shows that our Aztec culture were making quipus to keep track of who had the biggest crops? When were the crops the largest? And so I collaborated with one of our meteorologists here in the Bay Area on KRON, and I said, please give me the data for Oakland and all of the rain that has come in the past decade, because I'm assuming most of our children are about 10 years old. And so in our system of support meeting in Sacramento, we created this tapestry that allowed us to see data science. And so I just wanted to share our experience here in Region 4 about how we're breaking down those traditional ways of like, this is how science has been delivered, because I am also a scientist. I have a background in biology. And so I remember always looking around and saying, where are my people? Oh, wait, we were the ones that originated our zeros. We were building, we were engineers, but those stories were pushed down into the ground. And until we start repeating those stories to our next generation, we can't begin to grow. And that's our program.
Thank you, Monica. Inspiring. All right,
Thank you,
Jose, you're up.
Fantastic. Thank you, Monica. A lot of great points. I love the Kipu like way of doing you know, data science. That's a fantastic idea. I'll need to incorporate that. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jose Marquez. I'm a STEM coordinator for Stanislaus County Office of Ed, Region 6, also part of the Region 6 STEAM Hub. I think Danielle Jones, you're also here today, so fantastic. Share a little bit about our program, which we called Delta Sierra River Guardians Program. Go ahead and jump to the next slide, please. And so there's a little bit of cheating because I had some seed money to get this kicked off. But with that money, there's always strings attached. And it was intended to be a year-long program using what's called the NOAA Meaningful Watershed Education, Environmental Education framework, and which actually I thought was beneficial to have some sort of framework to work with. For those of you who are not familiar with, I suggest just Googling NOAA EMWI and you can get an idea. But for me, as a classroom teacher, not being part of the expanded learning community, at least not yet, it gave me something to think about because I was like, that's how I build my units. That's how I build lessons, right? So that grant was from EE Blue, 21st Century CCLC Watershed STEM Ed Partnership. A little bit of background, 21st Century Learning Centers are Title I schools, so any site that is 80% or more free or reduced lunch. At the particular district we worked at, 8 of their sites qualified. So they had that federal funding. First year was fantastic. And then all of a sudden, they're like, well, let's talk about equity. Let's talk about all of our 16 sites that have ACES at all their sites. Let's expand that. So by expanding it presented new problems. How do you go from 8, which was already a challenge? Initially, when we met to plan, the administrator was saying we need to serve all students. We want to be equitable, right? So it felt like all the way from kinder to 6th grade. So it felt a little bit like Oprah, like you get environmental literacy and you get environmental literacy, but it's like the reality was we just couldn't do that. So we got to the point where like, you know what, we're going to do a cohort, a grade level at every single site. So the first year was 8 sites, and that was approximately about 120 students. And then our second and third year, we went to 16 sites, and we were, pushing between 250 and 300 students. So how do you serve that many students? That was the challenge, right? We needed to create a structure that worked for everyone, myself included, because I wear many hats, but this is one. So the primary goal of the grant was just to expand, build the capacity of expanded learning staff to lead their own environmental literacy program. I thought, fantastic. We do trainings, we'll train the staff, and then this should be easy going. But then as I learned more about expanded learning and how many moving parts that are going on, I realized it was going to be more of a challenge. You couldn't do this in a single year. Next slide, please. And so then our program goals were pretty simple. Let's start with the basics. We want to get kids outside, right? That's like the very first thing, and let's take advantage of nature. So connecting with nature was a priority. The second one, as part of the EMWI, would be learn about environmental issues really affecting our local watersheds. And then the third, like this kind of dual prong approach, was we also need to train the staff so they build that capacity. So for us, the issue definition or the problem was let's do something that I think most upper elementary students would be really attracted to, right? And so then we did this whole thing about where have our Chinook salmon gone? right? So you can see in this graph on the bottom right, the numbers have declined, and it's pretty much along a lot of the West Coast. You've seen a decline of the Chinook salmon, especially in any watershed that feeds into the Sacramento San Joaquin Delta. We've seen a major decline, especially in local rivers. For us, it's Tuolumne is our home local watershed here in Stanislaus County. We also have others that are neighboring Stanislaus River, and then also Merced. We've had the worst numbers this year ever, but we've seen a decline for a while. So we use this to ask questions, notice and wonder. But for a lot of elementary students that don't have a whole lot of context, like our students do, go ahead and click again. We actually use this image here, right? This is going to grab their attention. They're going to see dead fish and they're going to wonder why. And so part of the training for staff is like we're going to show them this image because that's going to be more concrete for them to see dead salmon. Now, some of us who have some background in watershed and salmon life cycle will know this is a natural part of it, but for most of our students, they don't, or very few do. And so they start to brainstorm, ask ideas, whether it's pollution, drought, very little water, in this area. And so that starts them thinking along this path of what's causing them to disappear or kill them, right? Go ahead and click again. Now we have some context for this graph, and then we do a little bit more. So the why really becomes a part of the awareness. So go on to the next slide. And so for us, and for me as a classroom educator, at least in my background now as a STEM coordinator, issue definition was very easy. These are the 4 key pillars of an MWE, and it was just like, what's the problem, right? Let's identify the problem. And then part of the requirement was doing outdoor field experiences, which I perfect. This is what scientists do. They collect data, right? So we need to make some observations. So we did that, synthesize that data, make a conclusion, and the very last thing is an action project, and you communicate your findings to the community. And so that was the essential goal. How do you do this in a year-long program? And that was kind of the challenge while serving approximately or close to 300 students. So if you click onto the next slide, we had to do this, and the video doesn't have to play. It's all right. We have images there. But so we did some hands-on activity stations on our outdoor field experiences, but we had 80 students. I didn't have enough capacity of my own, and our expanded learning didn't have the capacity yet. So we just leaned on experts. So we have our outdoor ed program, which is part of our same department. We just brought in some naturalists, and they facilitated one of the stations. I'm not sure San Joaquin County Office of Ed, but they also facilitated one of the stations. And then we had a community partner that is a steward for our local river, Tuolumne River Trust. They facilitated a 3rd station. So we were able to manage up to 80 students per day doing outdoor field experiences. And as you can see in the images there, they're collecting macroinvertebrates. They're actually doing nature journaling with that. So it's super engaging. And then we use a dichotomous key based on what they collected, whether or not this river, and we actually shifted over to a different river because it was a wonderful outdoor classroom. And we just analyzed it. We analyzed it for, whether or not it was healthy. And based on what they collected, they were able to determine that this river is actually pretty healthy. And why is this important? Is because salmon fry are released just a few miles up from this spot here. So they'll make their way down within a month after becoming a fry. So it's the perfect place to test initially. We actually did a release a few weeks later. And so we tested the site where we did spawning. So they're doing what scientists do. They're collecting the data, and they're continuing to learn about what's the issue that's promoting or that's affecting the decline if our water is actually fairly clean. And then if you want to go ahead and move to the next slide, please. And so how do we make this work? We had to do like a dual prong approach. There's no way that we could serve all 16 sites, so we had to train the staff. And the way we did it is for every single classroom activity is that we did a morning training for the expanded learning staff. And you could see a little bit of they're cropped out a little bit, but top left, and then also to the left. Those are staff, and we did the exact same activity with students, right? So we modeled it for them, gave them kind of like a kitted lesson and activities to go with it. So anything they may have needed, they had something to go with them. Sometimes it was a tote, sometimes it was literally just a few spray bottles, as you can see in this activity here. And that tended to work well, right? Doing the morning trainings and then in the afternoon, like in the first year, we actually did, we modeled one of those. And so then we record ourselves using I forget if it was an owl or some other recording device. And so they could use that as an example. And we continue to do that. All the classroom activities to build the awareness and the why prior to our outdoor field experiences were done this way. And that's just a structure that worked really well. And we continue to do that all the way through. So that's it, like for us. And then I can share more in the breakout room in terms of a little more detail, the timeline of our program in the breakout room. Thank you.
All right, I think I'm up for this. I couldn't remember which one of us is doing what. So basically, we're just gonna give you the option to choose which breakout room you want to go into. So they'll be created, and then you can self-select. So you could even move from breakout room to breakout room during this chunk of time. And I don't want to take up any time. I want to give people time to meet up. So are we ready to open those, Paulina?
Open.
Okay. So they're open, and if anyone has trouble finding them, if you look down in the bottom of your Zoom under breakout rooms, you should be able to see and choose. Our speakers will probably disappear and go into theirs first, but if they're not there yet, just hang out and they'll arrive. We can help move people if anybody is having trouble.
But we'd love for you just to have a quick conversation of how have you worked with either your expanded learning or your content area colleagues, depending upon your role, if you're an expanded learning friend, or if you're a content friend, or if you're a community-based partner who's here. Like, how have you worked with the other folks? And what sorts of projects do you do or would you like to do? And just kind of like, how are you overcoming some challenges and what are some successes that you've had? We are gonna have this be a little bit of a shorter breakout room. We'll put you in for about 10 minutes. Again, so please introduce yourself. Where do you work? What area of California? And then just have a quick conversation about how you're working with either your expanded learning or your content area partners. And again, these will be random. And Paulina, whenever you are ready.
Good to go.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Okay. Are we all back? I hope so. Cool. Awesome sauce. Again, hopefully you had good conversations. Took you forever to get back, so I'm calling that a win. So we wanted to close this up, and we wanted to talk about a couple of things in our closing. The first is, as part of our Cali COE Innovation Hub, one of our working groups is working on thinking about, like, how do we help support our expanded learning friends? And so, Olivia, are you still on? I didn't know if you wanted to kind of explain what this this landscape survey is for and who the intended audience is.
So thank you so much, Katie. We are at the very baby steps, right, of talking about what kind of offerings would the expanded learning field like to see from Cali that would be the most helpful to their programs. And I want to say, I see a few faces here in the crowd that have helped make this literacy forum and this working group possible. So thank you so much. And just whatever information we can get from the expanded learning field. So our target audience for this survey is the expanded learning field. So if you are in that field, please, we would just really appreciate your input so that once we get this working group off the ground, it directly benefits what you need in your programs. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks for explaining, Olivia. And then, so if you are not the intended audience and you know who that person is, if you could please share that with them widely and often so we can get as much information as we possibly can. We are super excited to say that we still have one more community of practice for this year. It will be in April, and we will be focusing on youth programs. So if that's a hat that you happen to wear, please register. We'd love to see you again. If that's not a hat that you happen to wear, but again, you know the human that does, if you could please forward that information to them. so that they can attend and we can kind of spread this like joy of environmental literacy into all of these different spaces that really kind of make up a kid's day in education. So again, please share. We'd love to have you back and love to have others. Between now and then, if you have questions, comments, concern, need support with anything, these are our County Office of Ed Innovation Hub members. Please feel free to reach out to any of us. We're happy to chat, happy to hear what's going on in your neck of the woods and the things that you need help and support with. Also, in the chat, Amity just put the GOTS and needs. If you could please take a moment to fill out yours. As you're filling it out, I also want to fully express thank you so much for your patience and understanding. Apparently, technology was just not in the cards today for all of us, but you made it here, so you were supposed to be here, and thank you for navigating that. We appreciate it because we know it's not always as easy as we wish it was. And then last but not least, if it will let me, all of our resources and information, there's a wealth of all of it is on the Cali website. If you haven't had a chance to peruse and kind of look for different resources or to think about maybe going to a different webinar, if you're connecting with, like, let's say your community-based partners or your districts, there's all sorts of different opportunities and information. So please take a moment to kind of check that out if you haven't. And last but not least, thank you so much. It has been lovely being with you, and we're going to give you back 5 minutes of your time so that you can fill out those GOTS and needs. Sorry. And once again, thank you so much to all of our presenters today. It was just so inspiring to hear. It was just lovely. So thank you once again, and we hope to see you in the future.